There's a rundown on some of our Alaska news for this Friday morning. First and foremost, it looks like Alaskans are asking to be taxed. That's if you believe the testimony that came this week in front of the Alaska Senate. Most of those who testified were in favor of an income tax as opposed to taking the permanent fund. Meanwhile, a new report notes that an income tax would actually hurt most Alaskans less than a PFD cut. And basically the idea of hitting the PFD is going to hurt the lower income families because the income tax doesn't really affect the low income families in the first place. Meanwhile, no matter what happens with the PFD, both the Alaska House and the Alaska Senate have agreed that they're going to restructure it and use the income for themselves. One of the folks that helped to set it up in the first place, former State Senator Tillian, has vowed that he's going to get the signatures and he's going to get that overturned because they are missing the boat. That's not what they put the permanent fund in for. It wasn't a rainy day fund. It's the people's money. He said they can make taxes to be the state money, but the PFD is not theirs. Meanwhile, it looks like Senator Sullivan met this week with the White House officials about opioids and what to do with them, or about them here in Alaska and across the country. Part of a crisis, of course, part of their solution is to spend more federal money on the issue. The Alaska Senate has cut the performance scholarships, basically taking several of the tiers away so that only the very top tier will still get any money, something which, of course, is troublesome to those who are like, hey, look, the whole point is to try to keep Alaskans in Alaska to go to school, right? Now you're going to make it so that it's going to be even less affordable for them. And we're going to see a brain drain continuing. The governor has tried to force lawmakers to consider his nominees by calling them into a joint session on Thursday. They had so far refused to do so on their own. And officials in Anchorage say that one man is responsible for 5 homicides in the city of 2016. If you recall the story, James Guy Ritchie was in a shootout with police, and they found on him a gun, which they linked to 5 unsolved homicides. Of course, he is dead, and there will be no trial, so they now have closed, conveniently, all of these homicide cases that were just kind of hanging out there. The Economic Development Corporation has laid out a 5-year plan on how they plan to help use state money to bring new jobs to regular people by putting development into lower income areas. And Eielson's 354th Fighter Wing is still continuing to prepare for arrival of the F-35s. Meanwhile, the City Museum and the Juneau Douglas Museum has survived their budget cuts, and a state program apparently is showing success in recruiting health workers, as a couple of hundred people have decided to stay or have come to Alaska to work in the healthcare provision. 33 vehicles along the Douglas Highway in Juneau had their tires slashed. Let me say that again. 33 vehicles. Damage is over $10,000, and they're looking for anyone who has any information on that. Also, the Nanuq, you may remember him, orphaned back in 1988, Alaskan polar bear who was sent off to the Columbus Zoo. He was euthanized this week at the age of 29, geriatric by polar bear standards. And if you'd like to do something about cleaning up the mess out in Alaska, there are a number of different ways to do it. A bunch of cleanup days being organized around the state. Get involved, help clean up. After all, probably some of that trash is yours anyway, right? That's what we've got for Alaska News today. My commentary has to do with junk, but not here in Alaska. It has to do with space junk. Let's see what I think about that. And, hey, respond to me. Steve at radiofreespeech.com. Or, of course, you can call the studio line, and we can talk here when I'm in the studio, normally in here most days around noon, Alaska time, 907-374-5667. It's Alaska Free Speech. We call ourselves radiofreespeech.com.